Welcome to the Silver Bulls podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. And now, here are your hosts, Shannon Sommers and Eric at the BBC.
Hey there, Buckeye Nation. Welcome to another edition of the Silver Bulls podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers, and we're going to be discussing the Ohio State men's basketball team, which means I have Eric with me. Eric, how are we doing today?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, life comes at you fast sometimes, but that's something for another show.
Indeed.
So, there's been a lot of stuff happening since we've talked, and let's get into the biggest bombshell that happened earlier today. We're recording on Friday, so we're recording before the Indiana game, and this is going to be coming out on Saturday, so we're not going to be doing an Indiana preview, but we're just going to go ahead and discuss this bombshell that has been slowly leaking out with the FBI and some of the agent and Adidas, or I forget the whole, backstory of how it all came to be, but now there's like former agent Andy Miller and some of his associates, and it looks like the whole college basketball, not the whole, but the upper echelon of college basketball is in a little bit of trouble, wouldn't you say?
Just a little.
We've got allegedly, we've got spreadsheets and everything that were published by let's see here, was it Pat Ford and Pete Thamel on Yahoo Sports today, with regards to some players getting hundreds of dollars or family members getting hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. And, it reaches teams like Kentucky, Nuke, Duke, Kentucky, Duke, Wichita State, Clemson. I mean, the list goes on. And there's actually, I believe I've only seen 2 Big Ten teams that are in this. Am I correct in that?
So far from the names that I've seen, only Michigan State with Miles Bridges, and actually Izzo was mentioned as well, and
yes.
Diamond Stone from Maryland was mentioned.
Yeah, these are the only 2. I know when we recorded Across the Field, we discussed this because there was kind of some things that were leaking out as far as, hey, there's, going to be as many as 50 programs that are going to be involved. 8 of the 16 top teams could, technically be ineligible for the Big Ten tournament. What is this all going to mean? So this big bombshell comes out today, and everybody's like, you have a lot of people who are like, oh, okay, we kind of expected this, and, where do we go from here? And I mean, first of all, before we get into stuff, is there a way that you think that this is going to be able to be punished or managed to everybody's expectations, or is this something that where there's not really going to be able to be a lot coming out because the NCAA is going to be so afraid of punishing so many teams and hurting them?
So there are 2 things I'm certain about. Number 1 is that this is entirely unlike anything we've ever seen before, which means that it will be dealt with in a way that is entirely new to everybody in the world. I don't think anyone will expect what's coming. However, thing 2 is absolutely no one will be happy about how it's handled, because they're never happy about how any of the NCAA violation things are handled, ever.
See North Carolina academic scandal.
See North Carolina, see USC in football, see Ohio State in football, see et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. That brings me to, it was a perfect tie-in when you brought up Ohio State football. Now, there seems to be, and this is going to be my little personal rant right now. When this came out, I noticed a lot of Michigan State fans and whatnot were sitting there saying, $400, really? We're going to sit here and complain about a player and his mom getting $400. It is against the NCAA bylaws for a player or for a player's family to be receiving money from an agent, a booster, blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of set bylines, and it's all kind of crazy. I mean, I think it was Jared Sullinger, or he tweeted out that Thad Matta couldn't even buy him a Gatorade.
No.
You know,
I don't think that was Jared Sullinger. I think that was JJ Sullinger. I think that
was it
his older
JJ?
brother.
Okay. All right. So I got it mixed up. So my bad.
I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's who it was.
So, yeah, I mean, and the coaches can't buy you stuff and everything like this. So my rant here on this is, A, it's not about how much money, because that just makes you look ignorant. B, all you folks that were standing outside of Columbus with your pitchforks wanting to bring down Ohio State University because of Tattoo Gate, because they sold merchandise that they won or wore and it was theirs. And yes, they violated the bylaws and were punished. But to sit there and say that Ohio State is a bunch of freaking cheaters, and then you're going to sit here and say $400, really? Come on. No, you don't get to play that game here. You don't get to play that game at all.
I appreciate your candor here. I would go even further to say that Michigan State fans are more than welcome to say, really, we care about $400, as long as they immediately then follow up with clearly sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations are far worse, and we should be focusing on that. If they were to say that, I would accept them as being intellectually honest. However,
yeah,
we know that's not the case. So.
And in all honesty, we have a Michigan State fan that listens to our show, and I've been discussing this with him, and he's been outraged over the whole sexual assault, all that whole situation.
Good.
And he's also, when we were talking today about this report that came out, and he sat there and he was like, you're right about this whole difference between, because he started doing the $400 really. And then he was like, you're kind of right. He was like, but I thought there was something more to it with the Tattoo Gate, where it led into be about cars and stuff like that. No, there was nothing about any kind of cars. There was never anything. I mean, there's always been alleged stuff, but I think the last person that got busted for anything with cars was Maurice Claret, and he was then suspended, and he also took money from a booster, and he was kicked off the team, which, he violated everything, and he made himself ineligible, which in turn caused his whole down spiral, and it produced a 30 of 30 for the Youngstown boys. And so, I mean, he didn't do it during the 2013 season, or the 2002 season when they won a national championship. He did it the following year, and he made a lot of bad choices. So, I mean, don't come at this saying that Ohio State is a bunch of cheaters and sit here and say that you're completely clean. And for any kind of Michigan fans that are wanting to jump on the bandwagon and say, ha, 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 we're not done with this yet. I mean, I'm not saying that your coach is dirty. I'm not saying it at all, because we don't. I'm hoping they're clean like, Thad Matta is, to be honest.
Slow your roll.
Yeah, it's
slow your roll. Couple of points. One, you were correct. It was Jared Sullinger, not JJ Sullinger. Two, there was a little bit of a car brouhaha with Terrell Pryor.
I remember something about it.
Namely, that he got a fairly nice car. I can't remember what it was. It might have been a Z3.
Nissan or something, I think, yeah.
I can't remember for certain. It was a nicer car than you might expect a college student to have. However, it was sold to him at a ludicrous loan. So it was clear that when they went into the agreement, he was not given any special dispensation. It was clearly a poor family buying a car that was outside of their means to purchase, probably based on his potential future earnings. So, a lot was made about it, but nothing ever really came of it. It wasn't an NCAA violation by any stretch of the imagination. The last point is let's not bring Michigan into this just yet. There's no there yet, as some would say. But let's stick it to the Michigan State fans for now, because they're being a little
well, I just have a little thing with,
perhaps.
Yeah, I just have a little thing with Michigan fans based on, when we recap a little bit.
Don't ruin your Lenten promise.
Yeah, well, I mean, they finally beat Ohio State for the first time basically in a sport since before Trump was elected, I think. I mean,
they beat us in hockey after Trump. They had to.
Oh, well, I know that I not sure, but they probably did. It's just it's more fun. Yes, that's fact. It's not a fact because I haven't looked it up myself either, and I'm not making fun because it was over 1,000 some days in as far as basketball and football. So I just threw sports in there. So it just seems like the way everything's been going for them. And since they got the monkey off the back, they've been really overzealous themselves. But so let's talk a little bit more about this Yahoo Sports thing. And I believe we were talking before we started recording, and you made mention that there's possible reports that Bridges might be sitting this week.
Yes, that's correct. So, I wouldn't say possible reports. There's some chatter about it. So, Miles Bridges was, of course, named in this Yahoo report as his mother gained $400 from this agent. You could argue that because of this, it's very clear that Miles Bridges is now quote-unquote damaged goods. Because he has violated NCAA bylaws and he has accepted money from an agent, he is no longer an amateur athlete. Therefore, if he were to play, Michigan State would be forced to vacate any wins that he participated in after receiving that money, of course. Michigan State is scheduled to play Wisconsin. I believe it is Friday night. Maybe it's Saturday.
It's Saturday.
It's Saturday? Okay.
Yeah, Ohio State, Ohio State plays Friday, and they play Saturday.
Right. So there is a chance, and I'm not saying that MSU will definitely do this, but there is a chance that Michigan State will decide to sit him because of the fact that he has violated the amateur rules, and therefore they cannot, by NCAA rules, play him. More to the point, it's now public knowledge. We don't know what Michigan State may have known. We don't know what Tom Izzo may have known, and we don't know how long they may have known it. But if Miles Bridges does not play on Saturday against Wisconsin, and this Wisconsin team is starting to gel a little bit, they're starting to hit their long-range shots, starting to be a little bit dangerous, that could be a problem for this Michigan State team.
Is the Ohio State University the Big Ten champions then? No matter what happens in the situation?
Well, it would be a three-way tie, right? Ohio State, Michigan State, and Purdue would all.
Well, I'm not saying Michigan State wouldn't be up there because they are deemed ineligible, correct?
Okay, so they would have to be deemed ineligible by a governing body, right? We're not going to get a decision on whether or not they're actually ineligible until an investigation can be done. Right. Now that's part of the reason why you would want to suspend Miles Bridges immediately is to prevent the NCAA from coming down as quickly as they can and saying you're ineligible, right? Or you're banned from postseason or whatever they might do on a quick trigger. But as we all know, the NCAA doesn't usually engage in quick trigger behavior. They usually investigate for a good long time and then give you a punishment after the fact. It's much more likely that Michigan State, in the hopes of looking like they want to work with the NCAA, looking like they want to, what was the phrase from the USC investigation? I can't remember offhand. Anyway, so the NCAA insists that you work with them in the investigation, that you don't hinder the investigation at all.
Cooperation.
One of the ways you can try to prove that or try to do that is by taking action in advance of any NCAA investigation. So one possibility for that would be suspend Miles Bridges. If Michigan State were to lose, then Ohio State, Michigan State, and Purdue would all be tied at the top of the Big Ten. So they would all win the Big Ten championship in the regular season. A three-way tie. The tiebreaker, of course, would go to Ohio State, so Ohio State would end up in first place in the Big Ten, assuming they
have
beat
the one
Indiana
seed, right?
At Indiana.
Right. Now, the issue that I have here, and we discussed that we need to discuss here while we're recording, that all right, if you're going to go ahead and sit him and suspend him or whatever, and say, hey, look, he's dirty, or he's implicated in this whole situation. then you're kind of admitting guilt, or, just, I can understand if you're trying to not say cover your tracks, but protect yourself from the future, which the door is already open. So if he's ineligible, he was ineligible a long time ago. Now, I believe the NCAA sent out letters to each and every school in the country after the first initial arrest was made. I think, was that in the fall before camp and everything even opened up for basketball?
Yeah, it was back in the midsummer. It was like July or August.
Was it? Yeah, I can't remember if it was. Yeah. So the NCAA sent a letter to all the schools saying, "Hey, check your house. Make sure your house is clean. We're going to be doing a big investigation, and from what the FBI has been, informing us, that there's a bunch of people that are being involved in this. So check yourself, basically."
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's done anything. Nobody's announced anything. Everybody's just been going status quo, business as usual. Now, the thing that kind of really paints, really grabs my eye in this report is you mentioned Izzo's implicated in this based on the simple fact of him having dinners with Dawkins, and, it being, in the spreadsheets or whatever. I guess Dawkins paid for it or whatnot.
Who is Dawkins? You should explain who Dawkins is.
Dawkins, I thought I mentioned in the beginning, he's the former agent that has been. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, he's the associate. See, I even messed up myself. He's the associate that worked at the agency for Andy Miller, I believe.
Okay.
ASM Sports.
Yeah, I just wanted you to explain it for the listeners.
Yeah, that's my fault because I thought I did in the beginning and I didn't. So, good catch.
Mm-hmm.
So Dawkins had dinner with Izzo a few times, and they've given money to Bridges' mom. You can sit there and say, all right, look, and just by looking at this, and I'm sure that maybe it's reaching or whatnot, but he would have to kind of known that there was a situation where the kid's mom was getting paid from from these guys, right or wrong?
Wrong. So it is possible that Izzo knew, right? If Izzo's talking to the guy, if Izzo's having dinner with the guy, it's possible that he knew, right? But the bigger issue just said that if they sit Miles Bridges, they're admitting guilt. No, that's not true, right? To say that that's admitting guilt is to misunderstand the nature of the action of sitting Miles Bridges, right? For the university to say, look, this player is now ineligible by NCAA rules, he needs to sit, all you're doing is admitting that the document states that there's a $400 payment to his mother. That payment is a violation of NCAA rules. An investigation has to be done to make certain that he didn't violate NCAA rules before he can play again. Now, Michigan State may very well come out and say, we've already done that investigation, that $400 is crap, take a hike. Entirely possible. But if they do that and the NCAA deems otherwise, which is well within their power, they might decide to force Michigan State to vacate that Wisconsin game, which, of course, at the end of the day, we all know vacating wins is complete asinine punishment. No one actually cares. You can't vacate my memories, as I used to say on previous podcasts. But the long and the short of it is, if Michigan State wants to look like they're helping out, they will probably suspend Miles Bridges, but it still will not be admitting guilt. It will simply be admitting that this came as a surprise and that they have to do due diligent investigation to make certain that it's actually a violation.
Now, would that be something to where they didn't, and like I said, nobody has done anything as far as any schools across the country and is doing anything is suspending guys or ruling them ineligible because of anything? When the NCAA came out and said, hey, check your house, and is this just, they don't have the same access that the NCAA has to these, I don't know how much access the FBI is giving the NCAA, but wouldn't they have the same access as the NCAA then?
Well, okay, so the NCAA doesn't have much access to begin with. Of course, they can't force anybody to testify. They can't force anyone to talk to them. The FBI, on the other hand, can, and I'm certain will. The other thing is, I'm certain many of these schools actually did look at their own house. Part of the reason why we haven't seen anything is probably multifold. The first reason is probably that a lot of the people implicated in this have either gone to ground or been arrested. Whether or not they're going to talk to the universities is actually, I'd probably put good money on the fact that they won't talk to the universities. They're not going to implicate themselves in this situation for the university's benefit and get themselves busted by the FBI, right? So the moment the FBI suggested that they were investigating this stuff, I am absolutely certain everyone clammed up. That means that investigating your own house becomes more difficult. Who are you going to get to talk? If you go to the players, they're not going to tell you that they've been breaking NCAA rules because they want to play. So, and Michigan State very well could have gone to Miles Bridges and said, "Hey, did you get money from any agents?" Think Miles Bridges is going to tell them, "Oh yeah, I got lots of money from an agent, right? My mom got $400 from an agent." No, absolutely not. It's not going to be that stupid, right? If they went to Tom Izzo, do you think they're going to, they're probably going to ask Tom Izzo, "Have you been meeting with anyone, seeing anyone?" Izzo's going to let that slip? No, probably not, right? So again, there has to be a willingness to talk about it, whether or not there's any kind of hard evidence that the universities find might lead them to believe that something is going on. Michigan State's fans pointed out $400 is not a lot of money. Maybe you'd find a paper trail, maybe not. It's not like Miles Bridges' mom is driving an extra fancy car these days, right? There's nothing that screams of malfeasance when you only get $400, right? So,
yeah, it doesn't have a Reggie Bush type house.
Yeah, it doesn't have a Reggie Bush type house. That's right. Keep that story in mind, Michigan State fans. It's going to be important. At the end of the day, I think maybe the universities were actually worried about this. They wanted to look deeper at what was going on, but the trail was a little bit harder to follow, both because the FBI was involved and because they were trying to be more careful about, not overtly violating NCAA bylaws, trying to be a little bit smarter about it. But once the FBI got involved and essentially said, "We're absolutely neck deep in this," the game was up. Your chances of being able to get anyone to talk about this is basically zero.
Now, I forgive me for not remembering, and I should have written it down when I seen this, but I seen that someone put on Twitter that allegedly that there's talk that if Bridges were to pay the money back, then all would be forgiven, and it would just be water underneath the bridge. That ship would have been sailed already, correct?
Maybe. So, in past NCAA investigations, one of the usual punishments, quote unquote punishments, is that the player is required to pay back what he earned unfairly. I cite some of the football and basketball investigations of Ohio State from 2006 when, following the Maurice Claret issue and the whole investigation that transpired from that. I know we don't often remember it with Tattoogate that occurred, but some of the players, in order to maintain their eligibility, were required to pay back money that they had earned as part of a job that was deemed not, quote unquote, not a real job. And I can't remember which players were implicated in that, so I'm not going to actually say any names because I don't want to be wrong about wrongdoing in this case. I just happen to remember that there were a couple of football players who had a cushy job in Toledo or Cleveland, essentially getting paid to do nothing, and the NCAA found out about it and punished them for it. And the punishment was pay back the money, and pay back the money, get suspended a couple of games, and that's that, right? So yes, it's possible that if Miles Bridges wants to playing, he pays back the $400, and that'll be good enough for the NCAA. However, what that would mean for the games where he had possessed the $400 while playing, I don't exactly know how that'll work. That might be enough to satisfy the NCAA, especially over $400.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned that, I think I remember possibly a quarterback who, not named prior, might have been involved in that.
You mean a quarterback not named Justin Wick?
Hey, I was trying not to narrow it down to a guy who's got his name up in the horseshoe.
There were more than one quarterback, but you might be right. If I recall correctly, you might have been.
Yeah, so I mean, I just, we're trying to cover it from everything, or not cover it, but just talk about it from every way as far as the possibilities. Because I mean, look, this is something that's kind of huge in its own self, just based on a simple fact that while looking at Miles Bridges, and we're focusing on him because of the Michigan State stuff and Ohio State and Michigan State going up against, for the Big Ten Conference champions this year. So, I mean, that's just kind of why we're maybe hammering a little bit more, but it's something that, and there's going to be just more stuff that's going to be coming out. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm actually was shocked to see is, programs like Xavier or Wichita State on here. All right. So yeah, we're talking about, maybe, or basically us and Michigan State. So that's why we're kind of really zeroing it in there for me, which kind of leads me to another thing that came out today. And this is from the Big Ten commissioner, Jim Delaney. And as people might know, that Big Ten played a condensed schedule this year. They just, shortened weeks and whatnot and everything in order to be able to play at Madison Square Garden the week before the Big East has their big tournament, in order just to have a big venue. And did it, could it have, possibly cost Ohio State a Big Ten championship by having to go and play at Michigan and at Penn State in that short amount of time?
I think we'll never know the answer to that question specifically, because I could turn the question around and say, did the shortened schedule actually make it easier for Ohio State to win more games over other teams that weren't as well prepared or equally unprepared for the fast schedule? The key to note here is that Jim Delaney commented that many of the coaches complained about the tightened schedule after the fact. They were unhappy with it before, but they were especially unhappy with it after. That there were some health concerns, maybe players are having a harder time staying healthy, and there was definitely some exhaustion problems. In the past, usually teams had, I think the quote in the article was that 99% of games, there were 2 days to rest before the next game. This year, there has been many, many more games where a team plays, has a day off, and then plays again. And sometimes it's you play, you have a day off, and then you're traveling, right? Or one of those games might be a traveling game. So, do I think that Ohio State suffered because of that schedule? I don't know. Do I think they benefited because of that schedule? I don't know. All I can say is OSU did very well for themselves this year, and they held up in some of those tight matchups. Yes, I know Penn State and Michigan and how tight those games came in. It's unfortunate, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. So,
yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned, but we're not doing this next year, and
right.
It's over, it's done with, it's kaput. I know when I sent you the story, the only thing that you sent back to me, and it was like I hit send, and like immediately afterwards, you just must have seen the headline that says, "Thank God."
Yeah,
So,
no, it was stupid. The entire
right.
idea was the height of arrogance and incompetence.
Well, I don't know, because if you understand what he was trying to do, I kind of understand what he was trying to do as far as having the venue at Madison Square Garden by having all the Big Ten alumnus that is in New York City and the millions of alumnus that are in that general area, able to get there so much easier, I guess, supposedly, than going out to, say, Indianapolis, which, in all honesty, should be in Indianapolis because they're the freaking Big Ten.
Right. Let me say two things. One, yes, it's nice to be in Madison Square Garden, and yes, it's nice to give an opportunity to the New York Big Ten fans to go and see their teams play in the Big Ten championship. That's very nice. But let's be honest, if they really want to do that, they can come out to Indianapolis or Chicago. They can visit their family who's probably living in the Midwest. They can visit their alma maters and go down and see a game, right? I'd have a hard time believing that 100,000 Big Ten alumni in New York aren't making enough money to be able to decide to go see a basketball game in Indianapolis or a series of basketball games in Indianapolis if they want to. You're not going to sell me on that. The other thing is, if you can get Madison Square Garden when the Big East doesn't have it in the normal pacing of things, great, right? But again, trying to force your schedule shorter just to get a certain venue is incompetent. That's just it. It's incompetent. We should not be trying to force our way into a building. That's it.
And how much can this hurt Ohio State this year? Or not Ohio State, but just the Big Ten in general, as far as could it be a positive having that much downtime between the tournament and between the tournaments, or can it be a positive by being, able to take care of those aches and whatnot and getting a little bit healthier before the, between the tournaments?
So the bad news for sports fans everywhere is one data point does not make a trend, cannot determine an answer based on one data point as much as you might like to. So we have this 1 week to see if a major conference performs well in the NCAA tournament or performs poorly in the NCAA tournament after an extra week break between their conference tournament and the NCAAs. If the conference does spectacularly well, everyone's going to say, wow, that week break must have really helped. Or people will say, no, the week break didn't matter. You guys just undersold the Big Ten, right? One of the two. If the Big Ten does exceptionally poorly, then everyone's going to say, wow, having a week off was a really poor idea. Or they'll say, well, the Big Ten was
sucks.
weak anyway, so,
yeah.
Of course they were all going to lose early, right? How are we going to be able to figure that out? Tough break. We're not ever going to be able to answer that. I know most talking heads like to give a specific opinion or a specific position on it, but sorry, folks, ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play in Madison Square Garden and you're the Big Ten, I'm sorry, you do not play backseat to the Big East as far as, between tournaments. And the Big Ten has always been that last game that gets played before Selection Sunday and, the Big Ten tournament. And there's a reason for that because, hey, we're the Big Ten.
Yeah, we're a premier basketball conference back in actually generally been a pretty good basketball conference. It's always been nice being that last conference, that last championship game right before the selection show. That's always been a lot of fun, especially when the Buckeyes were playing in that championship game and right on the whether you were getting into the NCAA tournament or not. It was nice to be able to watch your championship game and really enjoy it, and then jump right into the tournament selection show.
Yeah, it was. Hopefully we can get back to that.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, it sounds like we will. So
yeah. And speaking of getting back to things, Ohio State, they got back to their winning trend. They the last time that we talked, we previewed the Iowa game, and unfortunately last week I wasn't able to record due to getting some health procedures done, which we're not going to discuss.
Yeah,
but
don't go into any more detail, please.
So we since we last talked, the Ohio States beat Iowa at home 82-64. They went on the road and lost to Penn State 79-56. They went to Ann Arbor and lost 74-62. And then they came home for their final game, which was senior night, and they won 79-52, which, by the way, I just wanted to say congratulations to Kenneth Lindsay, who was the winner of the Rutgers tickets, and he gave his tickets to his dad, so I'm hoping that he enjoyed watching Keita Bates-Diop and Andrew Dockich, Jashawn Tate, and Cam Williams celebrate their last game at the Schottenstein Center.
I especially hope he enjoyed watching Cam Williams have a really good night on senior night. That was, I wouldn't say an impressive performance, but it was a very solid performance from a player who, after a 3-game suspension and struggling a little bit after coming back, it was nice to see him find his legs, find a shot, and have a good night on his last night in Value City Arena.
Yeah, I know there was a lot to, I don't know if you've seen the video beforehand where they were doing the jerseys, and he kind of just walked past Chris Holtman and didn't give him a hug or a handshake and went straight for his jersey. And there's a lot of people that were like, hey, is there beef going on between those two? And it just was, it was all about nothing because, I mean, there is a real respect and a genuine likeness for each other, because if you watch the post game with the senior, speeches and stuff like that, how Holtman was talking about Cam and how he's the hardest worker and everything like that. And so, I mean, it just, you're right. It was nice to see, and it was nice to see the way that each senior was able to have that moment to get the ovation from the crowd and that thanks from the Ohio State fan base.
Yes. Yeah, it was nice to see that. The fans gave them a very nice send-off. I thought that was very appropriate.
And, excuse me, like I said, while we're recording this, Ohio State's going to be playing later against Indiana for the final game. Ohio State right now is a game back of Michigan State for the Big Ten title, and they are tied with Purdue, but they have the overhead for Purdue. So when you guys listen to this, we know for a fact that, well, after Michigan State plays, but we will know for a fact that either Ohio State's going to be a 1 or a 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament, and there's no in between of anything other than 1, 2, or 3. So
that's right. I thought we were a 1 or a 2. If we lose to Indiana, Purdue gets the 2?
Yes.
Okay.
If Purdue wins theirs.
Okay. I get mixed messaging through Twitter, which, that's the payment you get for using Twitter as your major news source for anything that involves math.
Yeah, right now Michigan State is 15-2 in the conference. Purdue and Ohio State are tied 14-3.
Okay. So if
Purdue's I was going to say Purdue's last game is against Minnesota on Sunday.
At Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter if it's at Minnesota or not. Yeah, they're going to win that. Okay.
Yeah, the way Minnesota's been playing.
Yeah. Oh, my. Okay. So, yes, you're right. All right. So, we're at the very least, we know that Ohio State is getting a bye in the Big Ten tournament, double bye in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, they don't have to play until Friday night. Mm-hmm.
What was that?
I said they don't have to play until Friday night, I believe, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so the first night of games is Wednesday. Then 4 teams get a bye to Thursday, and 4 additional teams get a double bye to Friday. So yes, we would be in the double bye playing Friday, and hopefully Saturday and Sunday.
And next week we'll know more. I don't think we'll know everything, but we'll know more as far when we record next week to do our Big Ten tournament preview or discussion, we will know 1, 2, and 3 for sure. How the others look, I'll have to look at the schedule, and there's still some games remaining. I don't know if it's going to be all done by this weekend. I think that there's some more games Tuesday and Wednesday. Maybe I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'll have to take a look at that. But
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll have a good understanding on that. Now, last show I mentioned that we were going to discuss Ohio State recruiting and what we're looking forward as far as the future for Ohio State. I mean,
I like how we just skimmed past the recap on the losses. That was good work. I like that.
Well, yeah, there's no sense, I mean, there's no sense, rehashing old stuff, especially when the two teams, they're you storm the court for a number 8 seed, and the other one's like so ecstatic that they think they're on cloud 9. I mean,
well, okay, so we do at least need to talk about what it might mean for this team going forward. But yeah,
I mean, they stormed
to
the
be
court
fair,
for an 8
I didn't
seed.
even watch the last 5 minutes of the Penn State game. I mean, I knew it was over, right? It was a complete and utter disaster, which I found rather shocking, to be honest.
Well, I think I remember seeing that you tweeted something about, as far as the guards and their play, and it was hurting Keita Bates-Diop, being able to get going for himself.
Not just the guards, the team as a whole. So, yeah, one thought I had, and whether this has merit or not, actually, I should say there were 2 thoughts I had, both of which are worth pointing out. So, the first one was it looked to me against Penn State, maybe a little bit against Michigan, that the Buckeyes were suffering tired legs. The way you know that is because of the nature of shooting. When you take a shot in basketball, most of the effort in shooting a basketball comes from your legs, not your arms, unless your name is Cam Williams. He likes to jack it from his arms rather than his foot. Generally, when you shoot with your arms, you get a very flat trajectory. When you shoot with your legs, you get a much better arc. And when you get a better arc, the basket is actually larger, right? Anyone who has good visual spatial awareness, think about a ball coming in flat against the rim versus a ball coming in from the top, right? Clearly, one of those is a larger target than the other, right? So a good basketball shooter, and I reference, for example, Will Buford or his three-point shooting compatriot that's top of the OSU three-point shooting charts, Diebler. Both of them had absolutely pristine, beautiful shooting forms. Go watch some of their film. They go straight up with their legs, and all they do is put spin on the ball with their arms. Everything is with their legs. Then go watch the games on against Penn State and Michigan. And what you'll see is that a lot of the shots are very flat. A lot of the shots are just not on target, just all over the place, right? We started against Penn State 0-7. You're going to lose against any team shooting 0-7 in the first half. The reason I think that happened was because of,
unless you're playing Purdue.
What was that?
I said unless you're playing Purdue in Purdue.
Yeah, true. Unless you're playing Purdue at Purdue. That's absolutely true. Anyway, so that boiled down to I think there were some tired legs. I think they were physically exhausted. They weren't getting up in their shots. They weren't taking good shots. And of course, after the first few don't go down, then you start to get a little worried. You start to get a little desperate, and that makes things worse.
Pressing,
and things just fall apart from there. Right? Mm-hmm. Shooting is very much a mental game as well. Cam Williams is a good example of this. He likes to rush his shot, which is why he puts more arm into it than leg, and it's very mental. That's why he gets streaky. If he hits, he gets into his form, and he's just natural at shooting, and he'll just hit it every time. If he misses, then he starts to think about it too much, and that's when his shot falls apart. Watch for those kinds of things. You can see it in the way they play. That was the first thing. I think Michigan and Penn State were sort of the result of tired legs. But then we talk about Keita Bates-Diop. Keita has only hit something like 9 of 38 shots in the last 3 or 4 games. Right? Here's this kid who was supposed to be Big Ten Player of the Year after we beat Purdue, right? Even before the Purdue game, everyone was talking about this is probably the guy for Big Ten Player of the Year. Where's he gone? He's fallen off all of a sudden. You might recall early in the season, I said that Keita is very, very good when he doesn't have to be the guy. When other people step up and make their shots and other people are making plays, he becomes much more natural. He just plays his game, and it falls into it. Everything goes down for him. He makes great moves to the basket. He doesn't force anything. But when things aren't going so well for the team, then he starts to force it. We've suffered a lot more turnovers in the team, partly because Keita is driving the lane and getting himself into trouble, having the ball stripped away or getting blocked or whatever it was, right? He's not making as good of decisions because he's trying to make something happen. So there's too much of a desperate desire to impart his will on the game, and that's not how he imparts his will on the game. He imparts his will on the game when the defense can't focus on him and has to play defense against others, and then he can find those lanes and make things happen. The last thing I'll mention is because of the lack of production from some of the other players, like C.J. Jackson hasn't been hitting his threes. Cam Williams hasn't been around to make up the slack for Jackson not hitting his threes. Andre Wesson and Musa Jallo came out big against Purdue, but then they've sort of disappeared again a little bit. Andre Wesson's done a very good job in the starting role, and he's playing really good basketball, but still not being a full replacement for Cam Williams shooting when Cam Williams is hot, right? So the double teaming also on Queta and some of the other defensive help that teams are utilizing to try to take Queta out of the game has put a lot more pressure on the team. And I think you see where I'm going with it, right? That it's causing issues with the way our offense works. Our offense, when Queta is taken out of the game, that means that someone else has to step up. If someone else can't step up or isn't stepping up, then the team starts to fall apart. That perfectly describes the Penn State game. Michigan game, I think, boiled down a lot more to, yes, they were double teaming Queta and taking Queta out of the game, but others were stepping up. It just wasn't enough to keep us in that game. Michigan was just a little too well motivated to try to take it.
Yeah, it was definitely excuse me, interesting as far as just everything that was going on. And I when we were talking on the Costa Field, I equated it to, that the Buckeyes were tightening up when they're missing the shots, and just you start having those mental issues and breakdowns, and it's just like a snowball going down a hill, and it just picks up steam. And it's basically, it seemed like what was going on. Just they started playing tighter, which led to more mistakes, which led to, more mental issues. And it just, sometimes you have that. And I mean, you don't want to say they're a young team because you have 4 seniors on here, but, I mean, they kind of are, a young team, and they're still them. And they're not, they don't have anybody on the outside that can be, a piece to go with Queta to where you have, 2 great players or whatnot in order to offset. So if one has a bad night, it's a pickup. And usually they've been really good this year. If one person has a bad night, somebody else picks them up. It just, the 2 games, it didn't happen.
Right. And then against Rutgers, we got a little bit more help from some of the other players. Of course, Rutgers' defense was sort of spotty. There were a couple of periods where they made some turnovers and were able to close the gap. And in fact, we're only down 5 at the half. But then we came out of the second half. We took care of the basketball. We played a solid game. Played within ourselves. Didn't get panicky or worried, made some shots, played some tough defense, and just took the game away, just ran away with it like we should have. So it was kind of worried some after the first quarter. I mean, the first half, because all of a sudden, Rutgers went on an 18-2 run or something like that to close out the first half. Yeah, and that was good defense from their coach, right? I mean, he made some changes to the way they were playing defense that really took us out of our offense. In a big way, right? I mean, we just could not find anything. And they, I like to say that defense becomes offense. Rutgers made that happen. They made some turnovers. They got some easy baskets. They got on the fast break. That made the defense flush, the OSU defense pull off of them a little bit and get a little uncomfortable. And they carried it with them and made a good run at the end of the first half to keep it close. But once we adjusted to what they wanted to do and, settled down, that was that. There was nothing more they could do.
All right, as we said, Rutgers was a senior night. So that meant, Keita Bates Diop is a junior, a redshirt junior, but he's graduated. And, excuse me, a lot of folks are, we're chanting one more year. And, basically everybody, we know that Keita Bates Diop is not going to be coming back next year. And he's got himself into a situation where he's worked, a very good possibility of being a first round pick. And so that leads us to kind of look forward to next year a little bit. So we have 3 players that, Andrew Dockich, Deshaun Tate, and Cam Williams. So that's 3 scholarships that'll open up, and then Keita Bates Diop. And I think Ohio State currently is at 15 because we have coming in that are signed, because Ohio State currently is ranked in 6th in the Big Ten, and I think it was 23rd in the nation for their class. And we have 4 players that are coming in. Have you looked at any of these players at all?
Yeah, I've been keeping a little bit of an eye on some of their stuff. Twitter is really nice for every once in a while someone will have a really good game in high school and they'll post some highlights of the game. So I know in particular Luther Muhammad is having a really great senior season. I can't rattle off any of his stats, but I know he's had a few 30-point games and is doing a really good job of leading his team in New Jersey this season. I don't know if they're gonna win a championship or anything like that, but they're definitely having a good year, and he's a big part of that. There are 3 other players, of course, and all of them are playing good basketball this season. Justin Ahrens, a forward out of Versailles, Ohio. I'm sure someone who actually lives there is probably going to complain about my pronunciation. No one ever pronounces a city or a street the way it grammatically should be. Then Dwayne Washington Jr. out of Chatsworth, California, who's also a guard, and Jadon Lee, a forward out of Houston, Texas, as well. Of these guys, Ladie and Muhammad are both 4-star players, and are supposed to give good help to the Buckeyes early on. But of course, there's a weakness with this class, as I'm sure we're all aware. There are very few point guards. In fact, none in this recruiting class right
now. Yeah, that's an issue. And when you're looking, you have C.J. Jackson. We could be surprised and he could leave, but I don't think that he's going to be going after 1 year. I know he's a JUCO transfer, but he still has work to do as far as his game. But we've been surprised by a lot of other things that have happened in the basketball world and stuff. So, yeah. But so that would leave, all right, with the 4 that are leaving, 4 coming in. So I believe that puts Ohio State at
13 scholarships, the NCAA limit. But
right,
yeah,
and they'll have 11 under scholarship starting next year if they don't add anybody, which means that they can go out and get 2 more players, either grad transfers or, grad transfer or a JUCO, which I haven't looked to see if they're looking at anybody, or even possibly if there's any 2018 commits still out there.
I haven't been paying attention to that very closely.
Yeah, I haven't either. So,
I know that Coach Holtman has said on numerous occasions that they're not going to burn a scholarship on someone they don't think is going to help them. Keep in mind that that's the philosophy he's used the entire time he's been here at Ohio State. So when he brought Andrew Dockich on board, he knew full well what he was going to get with Andrew Dockich, right? Even though Dockich had ridden the pine at Michigan, so clearly Holtman saw something special, and we've all seen the results of that. Dockich has had a very good year at Ohio State this year. So is it possible that Holtman is going to surprise everybody and find a point guard or 2 hiding somewhere, either as a grad transfer or as a JUCO transfer? It's certainly possible. But again, he's only going to make a move on somebody that he thinks to contribute to the team in a big way. We've shown this year that players like Jashawn Tate, really more of a mixed 2-3-4, if you will. He sort of swing around between shooting guard and power forward. Has actually been somewhat capable of playing the point, being the guy to bring the ball up. Keita Bates-Diop has shown some ball handling skills. So there's always the possibility that one of these shooting guards or a small forward type could help out on the point guard role, sort of do a double duty depending upon the personnel on the court. But at the moment, that's certainly a weakness I see in this basketball now.
Now, do you foresee? I know we talked, because Tony Gerdeman was mentioning that there could be a possibility that, all right, say Ohio State finds himself in a situation where they can add 3 players to their team, whether it be guards or whatnot, and especially like if they're, some point guards, transfers, however. Do you think that it would be something possible that Ohio State can take the scholarship away from a Joey Lane and give it to somebody else?
Well, I know what answer I would want to hear. I don't think we know enough about Coach Holtman to know exactly what he would do, although I suspect I know what he would do given his character and his personality. I very much doubt that Joey Lane would use his scholarship. That's not the kind of thing this coaching staff would do. They gave him that scholarship, and I think they're going to continue to give it to him. However, it is worth mentioning. No, I'm actually wrong. So at one point in time, several years ago, scholarships were guaranteed for 1 year. So this is going back all the way to, say, 2008, 2009. Teams like Alabama would take advantage of the fact that the scholarship was only guaranteed for 1 year, the athletic scholarship, and take it away from players that they didn't want to have it anymore. Okay, Alabama fans, don't come hunting me down and yelling at me for stating historical truth. Okay.
Yeah, this was true.
This was true. But I do know that at one point, many schools signed agreements and changed the way they were going to handle recruiting and scholarship. And Ohio State was one of the schools that changed, specifically stating that when they offer a scholarship, they would have it in writing to the player, clearly stating what their scholarship term was. And many of them changed the nature of the scholarship such that it was a guaranteed 4-year scholarship. I don't know if they do it for every single scholarship, but I do know when they recruit the players or when they talk about the scholarships, they're upfront with how long the scholarship is for. So I do not know what length of time Joey Lane's scholarship was stated for. I don't know if he was told, we're going to give you a 1-year scholarship and then we're going to have to see where we are at the end of the year. I don't know if they told him you have a scholarship for perpetuity until you graduate. I don't know the details, right? Of course, no one sent out a scholarship letter. I would hope that they've guaranteed Joey Lane a scholarship for his entire time at Ohio State. But is it possible that they didn't? I guess, I suppose, maybe. Totally hypothetical.
Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Big Ten itself was one of the first conferences to implement that itself, as far as all the schools in the conference, that all scholarships are guaranteed for 4 years.
Yeah, we were one of the first. I'm sure we weren't the only ones that did it that year. I think a couple of other conferences made that move as well.
Right. So, I mean, that was something I totally forgot. So that was, a good point to bring that up. So. All right, I think that's going to be it for this show. So I mean, do you have anything else?
Not particularly, except go Bucks, beat Indiana. That's going to be a tough game. I'm going to preview it anyway, because what the hell? You guys are going to listen to it after the game, and you get to see how wrong I am. It's going to be a tough game. Indiana has played fairly well at home, except against weak competition. But I think they will be well motivated to try to claim a win against a top conference team at home on senior night. Try to make their players go out on a winning note after what has really been a tough rebuilding year for them. And to do it against a team that, let's be honest, they're probably a little jealous of, because we stole both Coach Holtman and Musa Jallow out of their backyard in the same year and have done very well for doing it. I'm sure the fans and the players are going to be highly motivated to try to steal this win. So if I had to guess, if we win, it'll be a very close win, but I suspect we might actually lose this game and end up going 1-3 over the last 4.
We can't have that, because then Tom Orr will be correct and is 3-3, and then he'll be making fun of me. So,
well, I hate to say it, I've had a lot of respect for Tom Orr since he wrote that post Miami National Championship article about all the penalties that would have prevented us from going to overtime and having the pass interference flag called when Gamble got interfered with. Emphasis on he got interfered, by the way. I got the article to prove it. Don't call me on that one.
yeah, he's talked about it. He said that, I think he made a comment that was one of his shining achievements.
Yeah, it was a good article. I really liked it.
He made a whole fan base mad or something. So, but yeah, so I guess that will do it for this episode of the Silver Bullets podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. You can follow me on Twitter at ShannonCFB. You could follow Eric on Twitter at what?
At Eric to BBC.
You could follow the show at SILVR Bullets Pod. Just search Silver Bullets Podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Silver Bullets Podcast. Follow the Ozone Radio Network on Twitter at the Ozone Radio Net, I think. And Facebook, Ozone Radio Network. And if you have any questions, don't forget to send them in, #AskSilverBullets, or send them to silverbullets@gmail.com.
You have too many ways to listen to a show when the host can't remember them all.
Yeah, and I don't even talk about how, different ways you can download and subscribe, and, please leave a comment in iTunes if you love us or hate us and whatnot. So we just want to say thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week, and go Bucks.
Bye.